This week we shall be continuing the Poṭṭhapāda Sutta, this amazing sutta, given its value in establishing a solid foundation as to what it is that ultimately we practice for. I mentioned how it's not simply to gain merits, or it's not simply to gain some status in a higher realm, or some higher states of or elevated states of perception, or in this case, given the question that was raised to Lord Buddha by Poṭṭhapāda, the cessation of the higher perceptions as the person goes up and up and up in the higher attainments of jhanas. And we saw how they thought at the time of Lord Buddha, as they do now, and unfortunately, as we also find often in the minds of many Buddhists, where there is this sense of presence of a self, of a thing, of an unchanging thing, or a place where we go to even after attainment. So these are all deluded ways of thinking. These are all moha, or delusion, as we'll see Lord Buddha mentioning again and again to Poṭṭhapāda. But last week we started with the shorter version of, and the middle version of, the Sila breakdown, because oftentimes what we do in the spiritual practices, or any practice, not just in this Dhamma and discipline of Lord Buddha's that we call Buddhism, but in all spiritual practices, to some degree, it's, virtue is, yes, mentioned here and there, but it is dropped sooner or later, and you just have to take off. It's almost like the space shuttle or a rocket that shoots up from the ground, the surface of the earth, and as it is trying to reach the atmosphere, it drops these boosters that got it off the ground, as it were, in order for it to take off and be on its own. So often, Sila is seen as a booster, and it only is good as, for some time. And then you just have to let go of it, and it doesn't matter. That is not the case. If you want to practice, and if you want to gain results and really go the distance and attain maturity in your practice, Lord Buddha's emphasis here is on Sila. And these are the extended period, or the durations, or the lengthy portion of the sutta, primarily, in my opinion, lies here. And sadly enough, as I was mentioning, oftentimes translators leave these out. Maybe they mention one suttas because there's a repetition of this in some of the other long discourses, which this happens to be one of them. Poṭṭhapāda comes from the Dīgha Nikāya, the long discourses. However, it is a huge disservice to the Dhamma, and definitely to this long discourses, to leave these sections out. There's a reason why Lord Buddha is emphasizing this. So here today, we're continuing Dīgha Nikāya number 9, Poṭṭhapāda Sutta, Discourse to Poṭṭhapāda, from the long discourses. And we're now in section 3. Again, it's a long sutta, and I might have mentioned, but this has taken me quite some time to complete, and I just recently completed this translation. And I just realized that I began working on it in 2021. So I just recently finished it. So it demands our attention. It has such a huge wealth of data, of information, and so many things in it will reflect back at you as to where you are in your practice, in your understanding of the Dhamma. because we fall into the trap, every single one of us, to think at one point or another that we got this, I have this, I nailed it, I know the secret formula, I have this, I have the formula, the pattern I know, so I'm okay. I'm good to go. I'll make it on my own, just like that shuttle that doesn't have any boosters on. So Sila is not those boosters I was mentioning. Sila is the shuttle, as well as samadhi, as well as panya. Everything is one. You can't leave one without you have the others work without this, specifically Sila. So we're here on the third section, the longer section on virtuous living. So sometimes you're going to hear Lord Buddha talk about very specifics, things that you might find kind of like, wow, why do I need to know this? Remember, he was addressing a group of wandering ascetics. And India, just like now, in those days especially, was full of individuals or different ways of practice. Anything goes. Anything goes. And so long as you can give it some spiritual flair, it works. So like the guru culture now, it was like that, like it then as well. So here Lord Buddha is sifting out, straining and pulling out what really is living the spiritual path in order for a person to get to what it means to get to experience the cessation of the higher states of perception, which is, as you might recall, if you were with us, or if you've been following the recordings, perception in those days, as it is now, in many cultures, many religions, was seen as something that is given by a higher power. That was one interpretation. The perception that you have, you had no control over. That was one interpretation that they were basically, addressing Lord Buddha with. This is what our premise is. Another one is it's completely dependent on random, arbitrarily appearances of perception. And so it just disappears like that. Or it's something like a psychically powerful individual is putting in and out and turning on and off the switch, or some deva. So you had all these nonsensical ways of looking at perception. And Lord Buddha said, no, everything requires a cause. In fact, if somebody tries to drag you into an argument or a debate as to the beginning of the world, or what is the world, what's going to happen to the world, one word Lord Buddha gave us: causation. That's all. You're not against this person, you're not for that person, not that thought, not that religion, not that ideology, just causation. And no one can argue with that. So here Lord Buddha is going back to the main cause. If you want to develop in your practice, and really, because they were starting randomly, haphazardly, here and there on the spiritual path, and then saying, oh, I'm at this level. And he's like, hold on. Let's go back to the basics. Your virtue, where is your virtue? In order for you to be practicing as a wandering ascetic or as a religious practitioner, we need to make sure that we're on the same page, Lord Buddha is saying. That's why they never asked him about Sila, by the way. So far, if you followed us or you've been reading the Poṭṭhapāda Sutta, you see that they never questioned Lord Buddha on Sila. So some of them are curious, like, why is he even bringing this up? But you cannot practice according to this Dhamma and discipline without having a solid foundation of Sila, of virtuous living, virtuous behavior in your character, not someone else. Okay, let's start. So longer section on virtuous living, Sila. Now, Poṭṭhapāda, while other recluses and Brahmins who live through the generosity of the faithful who trust in them, obtain their livelihood through wrong means, such as by making predictions, divination, fortune telling, psychic readings, casting spells, the reciting, giving, or providing of special protective charms, amulets, and the like. And thus they engage in reading signs and omens, reading tea leaves, marks or lines on limbs, as in palmistry, and other bodily features, interpreting cosmic events, constellations, movements of celestial objects, interpreting dreams, reading and interpreting various scratch marks on pieces of bones, offering fire or water blessings, oblations with a ladle, whisks with ivory or horns, or oblations and blessings through rice grains, ghee, and various types of oils. Do you notice these things? Probably from your life, you've seen this happen here and there, maybe even in temples, Buddhist temples. I laugh because I saw this again and again in Asia. And not just in Asia, I have to say, I've seen this also with the rice grains being tossed in the air. You have this practice in Nunjo, in Tibetan Vajrayana practice, rice grains being tossed as an offering, and ghee is being offered, butter ceremony, they say. I forgot the name of it in Tibetan, and then you have the Theravadins blessing cars nowadays. So, or you see these bhikkhus, all traditions, using whisks or some type of a tool or thing. Sometimes I think I even seen a fan, someone use a fan that bhikkhus use to just sprinkle water, blessing, at a place, at a thing, These things these are so folklore, so backwards, Lord Buddha is saying. These have nothing to do with the Dhamma. But people love this. I've had people come and say, what does this mean, Bhante? Like, I saw this dream or that, or, marks on a, these are, sometimes people read these. Fine, I get it. But that's not the objective of a monastic, of a person who's really intent on finding peace, finding their way out of samsara. Because so long as you're playing by these games and toys, you're stuck in this great match called samsara, and you will never win. Never win. Like the amulets, you go to Thailand, good luck. They're everywhere. Everywhere. Government officials, generals, this and that, they're all wearing some amulet. You had bhikkhus, some that are known as arahants in some schools, that have tattoos on their bodies. Post monastic ordination, post upasampada, post going forth, they have tattoos that they had somebody put in for protection as charms. What about the Dhamma? Where's the refuge in the Dhamma? Where does that come in? I thought that was enough. The Dhamma that is in your heart, that's supposed to be enough. But you see how silly and stupid people are. Many places, actually, many people who go to, in some countries, Asian countries, specifically Southeast Asia, I'm talking about this, the Theravadan Bhikkhu, about Sri Lanka, Thailand, Cambodia, Burma. You have these, people go into the temple and they obtain these protective charms from bhikkhus often. Well, that's not right. Not my word, Lord Buddha is saying. Furthermore, they engage in making sacrifices by chanting mantras, doing blood sacrifices, making predictions about the person by looking at the shape of their fingertips, engaging in geomancy, so as to determine the best location and position for a new structure, such as a garden or building. Almost like feng shui, this and that, there's a place for that, but that's not the Dhamma. I'm sorry, you have, even in some cases, we have rules as, bhikkhus, we don't practice medicine. Even if a person was a doctor, medical doctor, he's not supposed to practice it, especially to gain some benefits. There's an incident of one character like that in Venerable Sariputta. And you see Venerable Sariputta shaking his head, walking away. That's not a good sign. Because the person was still practicing as a bhikkhu when he's supposed to be doing something else. That was his focus still. not the going forth purpose. So, predicting as to who will be the next ruler or important political figure, comforting and pushing away demons, doing exorcism, snake charming, treating poisons from various animals, insects, and rodents, interpreting the calls of animals, birds, sounds, and predicting the date of a person's death, making charms or reciting them to ward off and protect against arrows and other projectiles. And so, while others seek to live the holy life by wasting it as they engage in wrong livelihood and such useless ways, the bhikkhu utterly and completely refuses to do so, abstaining from such inferior and debased practices entirely. This also is an aspect of his growth and development in virtue. Remember, last week we were saying how Lord Buddha started talking about the importance of training. Well, training has within it this big chunk of practice called training and developing in the virtue. But Lord Buddha didn't just say that like a highlight, a title, and walk away from that. No, he's breaking it into its component parts so that the listener could understand, even if it is a listener from 2,600 years later, like us. So the bhikkhu's place is very clear. As far as controlling weathers and things like that, or putting charms, there's also the one that comes to mind is from Japan, Shingon tradition. You have Kobodaishi, who was known as, I often say about Vajrayana, it's not being just in Tibet. You also have the Japanese version. You also have the Tiantai version in China, but you have the Japanese, and that's where we have the Shingon religion developed. Well, one of the reasons why it really developed was because of the role that Kobodaishi was having on the imperial court and the rulers, because they were calling him in to influence the weather, to influence the outcome of political events. That's not the place for a bhikkhu. We should be practicing either on chankama, walking meditation, your sitting practice, walking practice, with your gaze downward, or then when you don't have any energy left, as you're lying down. That's where your position is. That's where you're supposed to be. As a bhikkhu, as a wandering, as somebody who's gone forth. And all of these individuals have gone forth in one form or another, in one tradition or another. But that's why they're there at the debating hall at Queen Mallika's, this huge place that she had constructed for such purposes, and not talk about the queen and how many, powerful military individuals of an army has of a king. It's nonsense. Again, Lord Buddha continues. Now, Poṭṭhapāda, while other recluses and Brahmins who live through the generosity of the faithful who trust in them, obtain their livelihood through wrong means, such as by making predictions and forecasting various things, as in identifying the power of gems and crystals, in terms of which among them brings more good luck or fortune. Similarly, helping in the selection of garments, staffs, swords, and other weapons. Helping in the selection of the best among the women one is to marry, as well as getting involved with the selection of boys and girls, male and female slaves for one's retinue or household. Helping choose the best animals for someone, as in selecting the best elephants, horses, buffaloes, cows, oxen, goats, rams, deer, chickens, quail, rabbits, tortoises, and other animals. Lord Buddha has to cover it up, that has covered all of the spectrum, because you will have somebody who comes in and says, well, he didn't mention tortoises, so that's okay, that's excluded from this. Lord, it's like he's almost speaking as a lawyer, as an attorney, covering all of the gamut. So there are no more loopholes for anyone to come in and say, well, Lord Buddha didn't mention that. That's why he has to be specific and in detail. And fortunately, not all the suttas are like this, and you've rarely seen me go over a sutta like this. And that was one of the tediousness of this beginning portion of this sutta, which took a long time because it's really arduous to even translate. But they're necessary for us to know. at least a few of them. And that's why it's important for us to be patient here. And so while others seek to live the holy life by wasting it as they engage in wrong livelihood in such useless ways, the bhikkhu utterly and completely refuses to do so, abstaining from such inferior and debased practices entirely. This also is an aspect of his growth and development in virtue. So development in virtue requires a person to make sure that none of these things are happening in one's life. So you don't do cherry picking with the rules, with what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And here, this is not just for bhikkhus. What I mean by that is, oftentimes in our practice as lay people, we would think that, well, I can go easy on myself in this, with this, I can do this. Well, I have control over this, so even if I end up in a, I don't know, a loud party, or a DJ is playing, or there's events happening, I'm fine. One time, Venerable Anuruddha made the mistake of going into the house of a woman who was inviting not just him, but other recluses. She was wealthy, and she had a place, I guess. It was almost like a modern day lodging type of like a motel or hotel or something. And there were a lot of pilgrims and people coming to that area, so they had to have a place to stay. But he was very handsome, Venerable Anuruddha. So she locks on him and says, he's attractive. So she invites him and gives him a room. And then there's more people coming in. So she's giving them rooms left and right. And then she goes, Bhante, I have my own room. I can actually sleep somewhere else, and you can use my room. Hesitatingly, he says, yes. I'm basically, putting it in a nutshell, so there's more details there. And he says, fine, just for the night. So he goes. Meanwhile, she's already planned all things out for what's going to happen. So she tries to seduce him. And Venerable Anuruddha is sitting meditating, and it's like not even a dead corpse is dancing in front of him. She doesn't exist for him. He's in meditation, and then eventually she wakes up as to what she's doing. She puts her robes back on, and she falls on onto the ground, and she begs for his forgiveness. Later on, Venerable Anuruddha, when he's reporting this matter to Lord Buddha is not happy about this. Not because he doubted the virtue of Venerable Anuruddha. No, he was a noble disciple. But he was afraid or concerned about what other people how they would treat this incident and treat this as a precedent. And they too will go and, spend some time in some woman's, chambers and say, hey, I have a strong will. You're no Venerable Anuruddha, for sure. So for that, you need to adhere to rules. And if you have doubts, at the very least, bring it up to your Kalyana Mittas, but especially to your teachers. So this is not just for monastics, mind you. Now, Poṭṭhapāda, while other recluses and Brahmins living through the generosity of the faithful who trust in them obtain their livelihood through wrong means, such as making predictions and forecasting future events, as in who the next ruler of the domain would be to lead the people, while predicting their future actions and strategies, how those in power will behave, or which direction they would take in the event of wars, or how they would be attacking, advancing, or retreating, and in which direction, how the attacking rulers would triumph or how they would be defeated, etc. And so while others seek to live the holy life by wasting it as they engage in wrong livelihood in such useless ways, the bhikkhu utterly and completely refuses to do so, abstaining from such inferior and debased practices entirely. Now, this also is an aspect of his growth and development in virtue. Self-explanatory. Now, Poṭṭhapāda, while other recluses and Brahmins living through the generosity. See, this is a very important statement Lord Buddha is making at the beginning of each of these paragraphs. While the recluses are living on the generosity of the people, the dayakas, the supporters, obtaining their livelihood through wrong means, though. We have a livelihood as recluses, as monastics. We have a livelihood, and that is the livelihood of someone who has gone forth. That means there's got to be huge differences between yourself and somebody who's living the lay life, period. Living the household life and yourself. Huge. There's a big demarcation line between both. So you can't go back and forth. And this is what Lord Buddha is saying is happening at the time to Poṭṭhapāda. But it's also, I'm here to tell you, this has been happening since then, especially now in our lifetime. And, it is with people's conscience that I leave this with. Whether to continue living such a fake life, that's not the brahmacharya, though. Such as by making predictions and forecasting various natural events, as in when the next solar or lunar eclipse is going to take place, or other transitions having to do with the sun or the moon, or both combined. Making predictions about celestial phenomena and what those things mean. Also, explaining when the next meteor showers will take place, the darkening of the sky, when or why some clouds or thunderstorms would be happening or not, when or why earthquakes would be taking place, forecasting the position of the sun or the moon, their shape, color, or impact on other phenomena, etc. And so, while others seek to live the holy life by wasting it as they engage in wrong livelihood and such useless ways, the bhikkhu utterly and completely refuses to do so, abstaining from such inferior and debased practices entirely. This also is an aspect of his growth and development in virtue. Now, Poṭṭhapāda, while other recluses and Brahmins who live through the generosity of the faithful who trust in them, obtain their livelihood through wrong means, such as making predictions and forecasting various things, as in telling when the next abundant rainfall would take place, or whether there will be a drought, predicting whether there will be famine or drought, whether wars or dangers are on their way to be faced by the public, whether there will be disease and hardship. Also engaging in accounting work or measuring and calculating things, or composing chants or poetry, as a way of making a living or gaining profits. And so while others seek to live the holy life by wasting it as they engage in wrong livelihood and in such useless ways, the bhikkhu utterly and completely refuses to do so, abstaining from such inferior and debased practices entirely. This also is an aspect of his growth and development in virtue. I was surprised in the 90s when I heard about in Southeast Asia, it's completely legitimate, specifically the one that comes to mind is Sri Lanka. It's has been legitimate to have monastics, meaning monks, bhikkhus. Bhikkhus participate in the government. Not only just participate in indirect ways, no, directly as actual ministers of positions or ambassadors. I was stunned when I found out that one of my teachers was such a person. And I was like, how do you do the math? Like, how does that work? A monk, a bhikkhu, and a politician. That's what it is, basically. Where you are in charge of a position in the government as a monastic. How does that work? Where is that allowed? But it's definitely not allowed in the Poṭṭhapāda Sutta. So, yeah, I think there are still, you're not just there, but in other, you don't have to be occupying a minister's position in order for you to have a political clout or a position, like a politically powerful position, obviously. Everyone knows that. But this was blatantly also as a, as an MP type of a thing, Now, Poṭṭhapāda, while other recluses and Brahmins who live through the generosity of the faithful who trust in them obtain their livelihood through wrong means, such as making predictions and forecasting various events in people's lives, as in calculating what date, time, or place would be most auspicious or significant activities for individuals and their families, such as designating the best time for wedding or marriage ceremonies, or divorces, or for purchasing property, or borrowing money, or investing in financial endeavors. The thing which really surprised me, or it was beyond grotesque, was when I found out that the university I graduated, well, I did the PhD from, my doctorate. I was surprised when I got an email sometime later that there is a Bhikkhu, Theravadan Bhikkhu, who is graduating or attending courses in the MBA program. I thought I misread it. Maybe it's like Buddhist studies, masters in Buddhist studies, which is absolutely 100% legitimate. No, he was the only monastic in the MBA program at the university. I was like, what? How? Where does that? How does that work? Why would you need? Would you need to have an MBA to do the numbers for the monastery? How much money you're making? How much fundraiser you're doing? What? Why? It's quite sad. It's quite appalling. But the registrar should have tossed this out. The administrator should have tossed this out. But we're living in times, and it's primarily a Buddhist university. That's how it began, anyhow. But it's just surprising. But this is not just one university. You have it all over the place. You have bhikkhus graduating with different degrees that have nothing to do with the Dhamma. I mean, with psychology, you can stretch it. But economics, political science, MBA, why? That's all I have. Why? I'm not pointing fingers, but it's just odd that someone who's gone forth to where? Where have you gone forth to? It must be away from the world, not jumping head first, plunging into the depths of the earth, of a household life. Money, business administration. Are you kidding me? Anyhow. Similarly, making charms or protective amulets or writing, engraving, tattooing, special spells to make one attractive or desirable or immune to dangers, like I was mentioning earlier, as well as prosperous and successful, or helping couples be parents by helping the woman get pregnant. Imagine somebody coming to Lord Buddha and saying, Bhante, my wife is not getting pregnant. Could you help us have a child? Could you do a charm? Could you... In fact, there was one incident in the Bodhiraja-kumara Sutta from the Majjhima Nikāya. You see this, the Prince Bodhi, the crown prince. I think it was him. He had invited Lord Buddha and the Sangha to his palace for lunch, dana. But he had another, an extra plan in mind. What he had was he laid this fine white cloth from the bottom of the stairs, all of his palace, all the way up to the main hall where they were going to have lunch. And he made I guess, an aspiration or determination, a wish. He said, if Lord Buddha would step on the white cloth, then my wife will get pregnant and I will have a son. Guess what? Lord Buddha comes all the way to the bottom of the steps and he stops. And obviously, Prince Bodhi is right there to say, Bhante, please, please come in. He doesn't know what he's doing and to whom. He says it again, and Lord Buddha doesn't say a word, doesn't budge. He's not stepping foot on it. Again, he asks. By the third time, Venerable Ananda intervenes and says, the Blessed One, the Tathagata, will not step on the white, because he understood that Lord Buddha must have a reason not to be stepping on the white cloth. Why? Because it was a sneaky plan. Then Lord Buddha knew that if he does step on it, basically the universe is going to bend over backwards to make this wish come true. Why? Because the Tathagata stepped on it. That's why he is the highest gem in the whole cosmos, because of the special qualities and the rarity of a Tathagata. It can only be one at a time. The universe will tear up, the fabric of the universe will collapse in the presence of two Tathagatas. It's too much to handle in the entire cosmos. Lord Buddha did not step on it. So obviously, Prince Bodhi was not pleased with that, but he just lets it slide. And then there is a beautiful discourse that ensues from that encounter, which that one also I started translating some time ago, a few years ago, but I haven't. It's stuck there, so I have to go back to it sometime later and do it here. Anyhow, or helping couples, okay, or for protecting pregnant women from having miscarriages or inducing abortion, chanting or reciting or writing spells on individuals' body parts to bring about a certain desirable effect, as in cases of paralysis, blindness, stuttering, or inability to speak, or making the person lose control over their limbs, making them incapacitated, or one to go blind, mute, or deaf. Also playing the role of an oracle, providing answers, like Oracle of Delphi. People would go, pay money, and she would tell them the future. You have this tradition still very much alive in Tibetan Buddhism. The movie Kundun, I think it was, that came out about 15, 20 years ago. You have a perfect example of that being legitimately part of that school of Buddhism. And you see now what Lord Buddha's position is in regards to that. Providing answers to questions while looking into a body of water, a mirror, a young boy's or girl's fingernails, or inducing the children to become mediums to give him the answers he seeks, becoming a medium himself by going into a trance, invoking spirits, or worshiping some devas or Mahabrahma to get good fortune or himself or others. And so while others seek to live the holy life by wasting it as they engage in wrong livelihood and such useless ways, the bhikkhu utterly and completely refuses to do so, abstaining from such inferior and debased practices entirely. This also is an aspect of his growth and development in virtue. Now, Poṭṭhapāda, while other recluses and Brahmins who live through the generosity of the faithful, who trust in them, obtain their livelihood through wrong means, such as by concocting various protective chants or substances, writings, potions, etc., to induce certain desired outcomes, whether to promote healing for someone or to harm them, or even to kill them. And thus they engage in showing people how to bless or protect a house from unwanted energies, how to overcome impotence or enhance virility, engaging in the consecration of sites prior to construction, showing people how to conduct ceremonial bathing, or how to ritualistically wash the mouth, conducting fire rituals, engaging in the preparation of medicinal potions, as in diuretics, laxatives, purgatives, etc., or preparing eye or ear drops, or various treatments with oils to be taken internally through the mouth, the eyes, ears, or nose, or applied topically, or the application of balms and other mixtures, topically or by rubbing them onto the joints, limbs, or the skin. And so while others seek to live the holy life by wasting it as they engage in wrong livelihood and such useless ways, the bhikkhu utterly and completely refuses to do so, abstaining from such inferior and debased practices entirely. This also is an aspect of his growth and development in virtue. So you see, Poṭṭhapāda, when the bhikkhu is well developed and matured in his virtue by living with responsibility as per the wholesome principles of the Dhamma itself, then no danger could befall him, simply because he has protected himself from all sides with his restraint. samvara. Through intentionally living a virtuous life. So that is your protection. That is your most powerful shield. Nothing could penetrate that. In this manner, just like a head-anointed Khattiya warrior king, who, having defeated all his enemies from all sides of his kingdom, fears no enemies, nor finds any dangers to be threatening him from any of the regions within his dominion. Similarly, Poṭṭhapāda, when the bhikkhu is well developed and matured in his virtue, by living with responsibility as per the wholesome principles of the Dhamma itself, then no danger could befall him, simply because he has protected himself from all sides with his restraint through intentionally living a virtuous life. Now, because of possessing this aggregate of virtue, being thus endowed with this virtuous behavior of the noble ones, he lives happily, experiencing within him the unmistakable sense of blameless joy. It starts within, that blameless joy. You don't have to look at the world to feel good about yourself and to feel joy, to feel this inner celebration going on. Why? Because you're practicing Sila. Even if the whole world is collapsing around you, it's no time for you to mourn. It's no time for you to grieve at all. Why? Because if you're practicing Sila, even one of the precepts, I need you to remind yourself of that fact that you intentionally are maintaining such a lifestyle by choice, living a blameless life. No one can blame you for that. And that is truly safety. And that is a cause for celebration. That is a cause for joy. And that is an absolutely legitimate cause for joy, according to this Dhamma and discipline. That's what Lord Buddha is saying. Because you need to have joy on this path. It's not a gloomy path. Piti manasa kayang pasambati. When you have that joy in your mind, the body naturally relaxes. Isn't that what we felt when we were children, running on the grass, or just looking at the clouds, the blue sky, or when the school, it's like recess, or you're the end of the year or the end of the week, you're just running out of the classroom as if you're out of Shawshank, you're free finally. That joy is absolutely 100% legitimate, and we must feel that every day. Not grief, not sadness, and definitely not collapsing and thinking, no, this is an arduous path, so I have to really, clench my feet, my teeth, and frown my forehead and just push my way through. That's not what Lord Buddha is saying. He did that for 6.5 years. Probably many of these people that he's talking to, Poṭṭhapāda and his crowd of 300, they probably do that, or did that. Thus, Poṭṭhapāda, such a bhikkhu, is declared to be well developed and matured in his virtue for living with responsibility as per the wholesome principles of the Dhamma itself. Now we get to the samādhi section. Remember Sila? After all that, took us a week and a half to finish a session and a half. But that's how important it is. It's not just a matter of you keeping or maintaining the 5 precepts and that's it. No. You see, it's far-reaching. Far-reaching. You've taken the courageous decision to hold your ground and defend your mind by taking on the 5 precepts at least, which you are maintaining intentionally, willfully doing. That will take you to this right here, mental cultivation, which is bhavana, samādhi, which is going to allow now Poṭṭhapāda to get a better glimpse of, hopefully, what he was asking for. Otherwise, it was like babies, in kindergarten, trying to figure out what the 12th graders who are about to be graduating are studying in their math classes. 1 + 1. I mean, how far advanced could they be? The child in kindergarten is thinking about the 12th graders. It was like that, Poṭṭhapāda asking Lord Buddha about the cessation of perceptions in higher levels. So Lord Buddha starts by speaking on the restraint of the sense doors, samvara. Here, that's the first subheading. And how, Poṭṭhapāda, does such a bhikkhu grow and become fully developed through his mental cultivation by sense restraint? Here, Poṭṭhapāda, on seeing a form with the eye, such a bhikkhu does not allow himself to be taken by or absorbed into its features and details. For he knows quite well that if he were to abide with an otherwise uncontrolled eye faculty, unwholesome states would start to leak in, whereby he might very well fall victim to longing, covetousness, and dejection that would dominate his thoughts. Thus he guards and practices restraint of the eye faculty. One of the reasons why we look for seclusion as practitioners is so that we limit, if not really eradicate any possibilities for us to be exposed to different sights that the eyes could see, sights that could induce, that could provoke some deeper feelings, passions to come up, which is the opposite of what we're trying to achieve, as in viraga, the fading away of the passions, the dispassion. So you don't focus on the details of what it is that you're looking at. Instead, you remind, and this requires your sati becoming more and more powerful day by day, to stop it at the first sign where you're able to see, oh, my eyes are seeing something. Instead of dwelling on that something, you stop at seeing. There is seeing happening. Every time you do this with success, you're actually gaining your freedom. Nibbana happens there, starts from there, not at a later point somewhere in time, miraculously. No. Every time you responsibly, willfully, intentionally stop the mind from telling you, the sannyas to come in and to get triggered by that contact, saying, oh, look at that. Oh, yeah, look at that blue, that yellow, that pink, that, oh, look at that shape, look at that thing, look at that person, look at that. You're gone. So from the very, very first moment that there's that movement of the heart, your sati must be there to stop it in its tracks. A good experiment that you could practice as well is at the moment that you're about to come out of your meditation, or whenever you have to, let's say, for some reason, open up your eyes if you had them closed while you're sitting, have sati be there at your eyelids before your eyes move, separate from each other. Have sati sitting there powerfully, like a warrior guarding the door, and see what is happening in the mind. Notice, what is it that you're seeing? Is it light? Is it color? What color? Which color? What is the heart feeling? And then you start seeing the sannyas. This is the slower, or the more meticulously you pay attention to sati, where you slow things down, you will be able to cut them, dissect them into smaller and smaller chunks of time. That is essentially why we practice sati, where you say, so this is how it works. This is how the mind does its thing. Oh, there's no story, is there? There's just gluing of patches, things together and making up a story, thanks to the sannyas. But Lord Buddha is not getting into this much detail with Poṭṭhapāda, but he's slowly giving them the Dhamma. Lord Buddha would go to any place where there's a chance that somebody could actually wake up. And he's there in the middle of heretical recluses, people who would talk about everything else other than true religious practice, spiritual practice. And he's giving them deep Dhamma. Hopefully somebody will, pick up. Similarly, on hearing a sound with the ear, the bhikkhu does not allow himself to be taken by or absorbed into its features and details. For he knows quite well that if he were to abide with an otherwise uncontrolled ear faculty, unwholesome states would start to leak in, whereby he might very well fall victim to longing, covetousness, and dejection that would dominate his thoughts. Thus, he guards and practices a restraint of the ear faculty. I remember when I was a kid in Lebanon, there would, every household had several guns during the war, actual guns. Ours we didn't have, my dad never allowed such things inside the house. And you would hear somebody yelling sometimes because of cars being parked in a certain way, or somebody would say something about this political belief of this person and that. And then all of a sudden there's a fight somewhere, and you see people leaving their house, going downstairs because they were insulted. And then you would hear some bullets fired, and then at least one person would not come back home. It was almost like Western movie, if not worse, actually. And we would, my parents would just pull us away from the windows or the balcony and just say, sit, don't move. No matter what happens, don't leave the house. It's similar to that in a sense. You are protecting yourself. You're not allowing yourself to, in this case, leak out, leave the house. Don't leave your house. Webu Sayadaw would say, don't leave the train. Don't leave your seat to Mandalay. Meaning stay with your object of meditation. And his favorite object of meditation was, of course, the breath. Can you stay with the breath instead of that sound, no matter how annoying or how beautiful sounding it might be? Instead, stay with something that is neutral, perhaps the way the ground feels under your feet. Can you feel the clenching of your fists when someone is yelling your name or saying some abusive things about you? Can you, instead of focusing on the details of that sound, can you drop into the body and feel how it feels like when you're white knuckling your fists? Tactile perception, tangibles. This takes skill, this takes sati, this takes samvara, what? Restraint. And in a culture, in a world, in a time period where it's the opposite that is advocated. Let go, let your hair down, go party, go, just be. Be one with nature, let it happen, that's what we have. And there's one would say legitimately, powerfully, insidious conspiracy going on for the last at least 75, 80 years in all the countries, in all the regions, all continents of the world, where it's the opposite of restraint that is being advocated. Just be, yeah. Well, you be yourself all the way to another birth and another birth and another birth. Similarly, on smelling an odor with the nose, the bhikkhu does not allow himself to be taken by or absorbed into its features and details. For he knows quite well that if he were to abide with an otherwise uncontrolled nose faculty, unwholesome states would start to leak in, whereby he might very well fall victim to longing, covetousness, and dejection that would dominate his thoughts. Thus he guards and practices restraint of the nose faculty. That's why on retreats or Dhamma talks or anywhere near a temple, people are not allowed to wear perfume or cologne. Why are you wearing it? To seduce, that's what it is. It's designed for that. It's not just to cover body odor. The mind very quickly will go after those pheromones because they were intentionally placed there to grab your attention. All of a sudden, your olfactory sense perception is like on hyper alert. Well, for a meditator, for a practitioner, that is a brilliant opportunity to drop into the body, into seeing what's happening to the mind. Oh, I see. So if I were not on the driver's seat, if I did not have restraint, my mind would be all over the place. I would be lifting my head and wondering, where is this deliciously smelling fragrance coming from? Who is the author of this? Oh, over there. There's that person over there. Oh, now your eyes can engage too. And now you're wanting to hear their voice. This is what's happening. And the whole scene comes alive when you have crowds of people, especially in the presence of alcohol, like, let's say, when people go to a club or a birthday or something like that. Everybody is dressed up, this, that, Why? It's an overdose of the sense faculties. You're a slave to it, and you're actually trying to capture the people around you into that trap. Similarly, on tasting a flavor with the tongue, the bhikkhu does not allow himself to be taken by or absorbed into its features and details, for he knows quite well that if he were to abide with an otherwise uncontrolled tongue faculty, unwholesome states would start to leak in, whereby he might very well fall victim to longing, covetousness, and dejection that would dominate his thoughts. And thus he guards and practices restraint of the tongue faculty. Usually we don't talk about the tongue faculty as much as we do about the other senses, especially the eyes or the ears. But there is that too, checking our relationship to the flavors we touch through our tongue receptors and what it does to the mind. Digestion doesn't start only when the food is in your mouth. In fact, it doesn't even start at the moment that you see the food in the plate, or even smelling the food being cooked, prepared in the kitchen, out of sight. Even the smell before it reaches your nose, digestion has begun. If somebody mentions something about the food, sannyas are so powerful. Sannyas will never stay sannyas. You have manjana, imaginings come in, and guess what? We are in Papancha land. And now the whole body is like buzzing with action. And the body will listen to the mind. Manopabangama dhamma, manoseta manomaya. The mind is the chief, mind is the leader, mind is the maker of all that is to follow. And all of a sudden, digestion starts. The enzymes get activated on your tongue, in your mouth, before there's even a sight of the food or the smell of it. And similarly, if it's something that is to be dejected, refused, hated by you, now there's disgust in the heart instead of longing. Again, you're being tossed around by the hurricane of emotions, of situations, of circumstances. You're no longer safe. Why? Because you're not practicing restraint. You let the mind loose. Why? Because the tongue simply got some, the mind actually, that's the thing at that point, the contact, if we use that example of a mentioning of a food being prepared. But when your tongue touched actual food, that's contact. And now what is the mind doing? Is it weaving some new stories? I was like, oh yes, this is it. This is it. This is the gelato that I was looking for. This is the thing that I'm... Contact must remain just contact. And if it stays like that for a while, even that will disappear, Lord Buddha says. Because you will catch it before it even happens. Why? Because sati is sitting there, firm, solid. Nothing is going to go past sati. That is, seeing is just seeing. Tasting is just tasting. Similarly, on touching a tactile object with the body, the bhikkhu does not allow himself to be taken by or absorbed into its features and details. For he knows quite well that if he were to abide with an otherwise uncontrolled body faculty, unwholesome states would start to leak in, whereby he might very well fall victim to longing, covetousness, and dejection that would dominate his thoughts. Thus he guards and practices restraint of the body faculty. Self-explanatory. Similarly, on knowing a thought with the mind, the bhikkhu does not allow himself to be taken by or absorbed into its features and details. For he knows quite well that if he were to abide with an otherwise uncontrolled mind faculty, unwholesome states would start to leak in, whereby he might very well fall victim to longing, covetousness, and dejection that would dominate his thoughts. Thus he guards and practices restraint of the mind faculty. By possessing complete restraint over his mental faculties, such a bhikkhu is not perturbed when touched by a displeasing negative experience. Or, one would add, a positive experience even, that is exhilarating. You just got a paycheck or a raise that is far beyond what you imagine. Okay. Or you won the lottery. Okay. Before the celebration starts, is sati there at the mailbox, greeting you to see what's happening, what's going to happen in the mind. I mentioned to you how whenever I would order Amazon or something like that from your mail, or a package, especially if it's something that I've been looking forward to receiving it for a long time, and the package arrives, the postman or person would deliver it, and I would put it on the counter. I would put it somewhere aside and just look at it. Not to look at it, but to see what's happening inside, because there is interesting commotions happening. There's that part of you that says, yeah, this is what we've been waiting for a few years. You have it. Yes, open it, tear it up. Be like that kid again at Christmas. And then comes samvara. Says, this is interesting. This is a lovely game we can play. I mean, the good news is that it's here, okay? It's here. All right, so we can rest. Now let's take it to another level. So you see, you can add more joy into your life by the addition of sati. Samvara is not something, or restraint is not something that deprives you of life. This is what a lot of people, at least whoever's been educated in the Western way of, philosophies and all that, we tend to think that restraint is something that is taking something from you. You're cutting yourself short from your full potential. When it's the opposite. You're stopping the leakage. You're stopping the leakage so that you can apply your energy somewhere else. Sooner or later, we have to ask ourselves, is Nibbana really what we want? Many times people just take it for granted. Yeah, sure, yeah. I mean, of course, I'm a Buddhist, or I like Buddhism, or I have my Buddhist name, or I read, I practice. Yeah. But when it comes down to it, do you really want to experience freedom? Really? If most of us are being honest in the world, majority will actually, if they're being truly honest, they would say, actually, no, I'm fine where I am. I just need extra stuff so that I can handle difficulties better. What happened? I thought, what happened? People are afraid of Nibbana. Why? Because they're afraid of restraint already. I mean, come on, I'm doing my 5 precepts. That should be enough, Bhante. I'm already restraining myself. From what? What are you restraining yourself from? Not from doing stupid things. That's what you're doing. You're stopping yourself from not doing things so that those things don't happen to you. Those painful situations, you don't end up with the wrong crowd. You don't end up asking yourself, what am I doing here? Why am I even here with these people, with this group, with this? Why am I even doing this program? Let's say I was mentioning about that monk with the MBA program. What am I doing here? There's a lack of panya. There is absolutely 100% avijja. You heard me say avijja is stupidity. I add to that, I did the whiteboard the other day, I was saying how it's neglectfully ignoring. Ignoring what? The facts. What it is that I'm really after. Being honest. In fact, I would even add to that, instead of neglectfully ignoring, I would even say willfully ignoring. You willfully are saying, I'm not going to look at that because it's too brilliant. Too big of a possibility, this Nibbana, and I don't know what will happen. I think I might just lose myself, or my identifications are going to be lost. So this is enough for me, Bhante. And that's another reason why many people self-sabotage on this path. They would say, this is my limit, I won't go beyond that. Maybe I'll get some psychic abilities, hopefully. Or maybe I might get the first, second stage nobility, so I can tell people about that and put it on my business card. Yes, I'm a Sakadagami. Even though if there are few people. That's not why Lord Buddha taught. He taught absolute freedom from suffering, period. Out. Done. So restraint is giving you life. Restraint is not taking away life. It's providing you life. Out of, a way out of prison. That's Nirodha. That is what's ceasing. When you're going to open a door, you're using a lot of restraint, you know, even when you're running towards the door. Why? How are you restraining yourself? Well, you're restraining yourself from slamming onto the walls, the corridor, the hallway, this, that. When you're driving a car, when you're getting on a bus, you're restraining yourself from taking the wrong bus. You're restraining yourself from taking the wrong left turn, the wrong right turn. You're restraining yourself from hitting the gas pedal when you're supposed to be hitting the brakes because it's red, the light is red. So you just restrain yourself from doing something stupid. Hence, you're not reaching for the wall expecting it to be the door handle. No, you restrain yourself, you move towards the door and you reach for the door handle and you turn the knob and you go out into freedom. So are you really after Nibbana or something else? Are you afraid of Nibbana? So stop sabotaging yourself. So for this one, you need to really look at the mind. Therefore, being thus endowed with this level of restraint over his sense doors, he lives happily, experiencing within him the unmistakable sense of blameless joy. Now we get to the second section of the mind, or bhavana samadhi, which we're in that section. Maintaining mindfulness, sati, and full awareness, sampajanya. These go hand in hand. Sati is never by itself. Whether approaching or going away, in looking forward, backward, and about, he remains mindful. clearly comprehending the experience of it with full awareness. When you're brushing your teeth, when you're combing your hair, when you're putting on your clothes, when you're standing, are you aware? Are you aware of your body? Lord Buddha says, you got to start from the body. The mind could be deceptive, or you might be stuck on a memory. A few frames back, you're still stuck there, but your body is here. That's moved up a few seconds. You're in the body's in the present. Your thoughts are not. Your memories are not. Also, when bending and stretching his limbs, or in wearing his outer robes, or taking the bowl with him, he remains mindful, clearly comprehending the experience of it with full awareness. When eating his meal, drinking and tasting, he remains mindful, moving and behaving with full awareness, clearly comprehending the whole experience. Emphasis on whole experience. Similarly, when urinating and defecating, he remains mindful, moving and behaving with full awareness, clearly comprehending the entire experience, whether he is walking, standing, sitting, or lying down to rest, or while waking up, speaking, or while being silent. You're still fully aware. Yeah, you might not be moving your lips, but are you also aware if your mind, what is the mind state? What is the mind talking? Subvocal speeches, are you having a monologue with yourself? What's playing in the movie theater in your mind? This Poṭṭhapāda is how a bhikkhu lives by maintaining mindfulness and full awareness. And how, Poṭṭhapāda, does such a bhikkhu live with contentment wherever and whatever situation he may find himself in? Poṭṭhapāda, wherever he may. So Lord Buddha is asking the question, Poṭṭhapāda is sitting there, Lord Buddha is answering. Poṭṭhapāda, wherever he may be, living fully contented and satisfied with the robes for his body and the morsels of food he obtains for his stomach, the bhikkhu goes with all that he has. Thus, much like a bird that flies freely with only the feathers on its back, in the same way, contented and satisfied with the robes for the body and morsels of food for the stomach, wherever he goes, the bhikkhu goes with all his things. That's it. Doesn't have a tow truck of stuff. For me, the best example is or was Webu Sayadaw. He was very strict with the requisites. One time he was about to give, he was ordaining someone, and that person had come with all his things that he would need for his practice as a monastic. And Webu Sayadaw asks, do you have your bowl, which is what the Upajjhaya has to ask during the ordination to see if, do you have your 3 sets of robes? The person says, yes. Okay. And he looks over and he says, what is that? He points. So that person had also brought his mosquito net and the umbrella, which is a big thing, like in Thai forest tradition, things like that. Not just them, but And the person says, well, Bhante, it's for Sayadaw, it's for the mosquitoes. When I practice in the forest, he's like, do you ever recall anywhere in the suttas where Lord Buddha had a mosquito net? Or any of the Arya Savakans? Anywhere? Quietly, that person puts away, gives it away, pushes it aside, and says, let's proceed. Not everyone can do that. So it's not I wouldn't emphasize the strictness necessarily of it, but the purity of the approach is very touching and very powerful. And he lived it. That's the most poignant part of that story. He lived it. Webu Sayadaw lived that, which tells us that it is possible today. Possible. In this manner, Poṭṭhapāda, such a bhikkhu lives with contentment wherever he goes and whatever situation he may find himself in. By possessing these virtues also of the noble ones, the bhikkhu experiences the internal happiness that is blameless. You see that? It's being repeated. The internal happiness that is blameless. It's very important. But so long as we're working with the sense, being as slaves to the senses, or living mindlessly with ayoniso manasikara, without wise attention, then even if you experience some level of pleasure, that can never be blameless happiness. It's just a matter of circumstances coming together, certain things aligning in such a way because of other causes, and now you have a certain outcome. But is there true blameless happiness? That is highly questionable. When there was no sati, when there was no samvara, when there was basically no sila. Third section, working with the obstacles under the samādhi. Working with the obstacles, hindrances, nivarana. Remember, Lord Buddha would never touch on these. He would never discuss bhavana samādhi unless he made sure that he covered all the bases, as they say, of sila, of virtue. Only then he's able to talk, because then the person would not be confused as to, okay, I could live a non-virtuous life and I could just drop in and start working with the hindrances. That's not going to work. That's why on retreats, it would be almost comical when I would see people misbehaving, meaning not practicing sila, and somehow going to the teacher and telling the teacher, I am experiencing these things. It doesn't work. You're just lying. I used to sit on those interviews. Well, I also saw this person doing this, doing that, eating like this, talking during lunch, being on their phone. What's happening? How could you go deep in your practice and be able to handle the hindrances? What are you doing? Either you're suppressing, which means there's no wisdom when you come out, or you're lying. So virtue is number one. And when you have virtue already, even if you're not able to go into some jhana or some deep level of tranquility of mind, you're still experiencing levels of blameless happiness. That's a guarantee. So by restraint, you're not restraining anything yourself from living. You're actually living for the first time. Now, being endowed with this virtuous behavior of the noble ones through complete restraint over his mental faculties, along with mindfulness and clear comprehension, with full awareness that are distinctive of the noble ones, he looks for and then abides in a secluded dwelling, a forest, the root of a tree, a mountain grotto, a cemetery, a jungle, an open space, or a heap of straw. Naturally, the mind inclines towards that. It might be your room. Or it might be just, if you don't have any of those facilities available for you, to you, then it might even be putting on your headphones, earphones, earplugs, closing your eyes, because the world around you is not permitting you to be completely secluded. But somehow you're able to do that, wonderful. But go all the way. And then, having found himself a quiet area to practice in the forest or by the visible roots of trees, or in an empty room, by folding his legs in a comfortable position and keeping the body straight, he establishes mindfulness in front of him. Thus, the bhikkhu trains and lives by actively dropping passion, lust, and greed from his heart, as he purifies it from the stains of coveting. He trains and lives by actively dropping anger from his heart, as he purifies it from the stains of hatred. He trains and lives by actively dropping delusion from his heart, as he purifies it from the stains of delusion. He develops compassion towards all living beings, as he purifies his heart from any hatred or ill will. With mindfulness and clearly comprehending his experience, he actively pushes through both drowsiness and procrastination, as he abides with the perception of light, cleansing his mind from drowsiness and procrastination. Usually it's translated as sloth and torpor. Basically, procrastination for me, I translate it like that. It's tinhamidda, by the way, in Pali. Procrastination is not just in the case of your meditation, but in life too. Many of us lack enthusiasm and the willingness to take action, to take initiative. Lord Buddha addresses that with tinhamidda often, because if you have that desire to really taste Nibbana, you're not going to cave in and give in to sloth and torpor or procrastination and drowsiness. You say, okay, I haven't been sleeping for the last 16 hours or 18 hours or 24 hours. I get it. The body needs rest, but I have to do this. That I have to do this requires you to really put an extra dose of effort into your practice. You must really mean it. Webu Sayadaw would just completely forego sleep. He had adopted the sitter's practice. It's one of the Dhuttangas. He was known as a bhikkhu who never slept, never lied down, that is. He would always, and he would also mention that he wouldn't sleep. And he didn't die because he was practicing always, either sitting, but he never lied down. In this case, it was 3 postures. And if the body got tired, he would get up, walk, do walking meditation. We have a perfect example of this in one of the earliest suttas I covered with you, the Pachalayamana Sutta with Venerable Mahamoggallana, where he was struggling. I mentioned that sutta many, many times here. And Lord Buddha gives him direct instructions, step by step. If this doesn't work, do that, Moggallana. If this doesn't work, that's not just for Mahamoggallana, Venerable Mahamoggallana. That's also for us. So using the perception of light really in your mind, even if it's in the middle of the night, wakes you up. Again, you must want it. Your reasons must be strong. He thus calmly stabilizes the agitated mind while carefully moving beyond both restlessness and worry as he abides with a heart that is now internally appeased and contented. Finally, by actively removing skeptical doubt, he lives while putting an end to all doubts and perplexity he once had about the wholesome behaviors that should be developed and the unwholesome behaviors that should be abandoned. The next section is about similes. Actually, the title is Similes for the Obstacles, Hindrances, the Nirvana. So it's a longer section, though, so I will just leave that for next week without overwhelming you. And I do want to make sure that we don't speed through this sutta because it is a treasure house of information, of instructions. And this is not just an instructions given to heretics of other sects, believers of other traditions. No, this is for us as well, to re-anchor yourself in proper practice and proper motive as to why you're practicing in the first place. So one key question to ask is, what am I practicing for? This is a great opportunity for you to start journaling. If you haven't already begun, write just one essay, one paragraph for yourself. Just for yourself, and then tear it up if you would. Don't show it to anyone, just for you. Why am I practicing? Why am I pursuing this path? And don't judge, please, yourself. Maybe it might be very facetious, very superficial thing, like to look different, to be different, to be, it might be that, but you have to be honestly questioning yourself. Be honest. And again, you're not showing it to anyone. This is for you to see where you are at in life in this practice. Because by knowing what's the real motive, you can regain a better perspective and really dedicate yourself anew and give more to this practice that it deserves. Is there fear towards Nibbana? Is there? Remember, many of us are carrying heretical views from past lives. We weren't always practitioners or interested in the Dhamma, you know. No, no, no. We have a lot of junk. And don't think that these are just ideas from this life. No, we're carrying a lot of trashy ideas and beliefs and ditthis from other lifetimes that haven't left. Who knows? You might have been one of those people from the Poṭṭhapāda crowd of 300. Who knows? So, just something to know, to bear in mind, and to, it'll be an interesting experiment. And if you do have comments about that, or you want to share something about that with me, if you choose to, something comes up, and then reach out, and you know, we'll go over it together, you know. But are there any questions before proceed? Comments? Yes? Yes, Chitta.
It's more, I want to say thank you actually for you including the way that the person or like people you've seen on retreat are eating as part of Sila, because that's something that like I can completely lose myself in, you know, almost as if it's totally blameless. And I just want to say thank you for bringing that to my attention, to our attention, because that's somewhere that I can certainly improve on. It's certainly another way to bring in sati. So thank you for that. That's really, really, really useful. It even feels like maybe like a missing piece that I've you know, almost been allowing myself to just totally lose myself with that. So thank you.
Of course, yes. But be mindful that it doesn't stop there. That example that I gave of being on a retreat, which is a normal thing that happens. Normal as in not, it shouldn't be permissible, that's what I'm saying, by the person. At least the organizers have to be on top of it. Emergencies and things of that sort, they're of course, you know, notwithstanding. But what does happen is, often after the retreat or such settings, people have, you know, most of these platforms that showed up during the last 15, 20 years or 15 years, these Dhamma platforms, where individuals who have participated on retreats, let's say, would come and talk Dhamma or talk about, sooner or later it will turn into some type of a forum where people are talking about experiences. It is unavoidable. That is the carryover, the digital version, the carryover of what was taking place on a retreat. Because the person was not happy about the seclusion that the retreat represents. That's the purpose for which it serves. It's supposed to serve. So it didn't work there, the seclusion, and now they don't want to be secluded in their own lives, in their own daily practice, so they still want to hang out digitally, albeit under the umbrella of Dhamma talk. It's all waste. Perfect example of that in the Kosambi Sutta, or there's a few suttas which I've covered, where you have Venerable Kimbila, Nandiya, and Venerable Anuruddha living together in the forest, in the park. Just them three. And Lord Buddha goes, visits them. This is after the Kosambi crowd, the monks, did something stupid. They basically kicked Lord Buddha out by not following decency, rules of decency, for the name of Vinaya. Yeah. And Lord Buddha goes, doesn't say he just puts his kuti in order and he leaves. But before he does completely go into seclusion for the vassa, for the 3 months retreat in the jungle, to be by himself, he first wants to go to see some bhikkhus. So he visits one bhikkhu who's living completely by himself, and then he goes and visits the 3 bhikkhus. And he sees them how they're living harmoniously, and he says, how are you doing it? How are you managing not fighting and biting each other's heads off, And they weren't arahants yet, these three venerable ones. And Venerable Anuruddha says, Bhante, we're like blending like milk and water. Whatever the other person needs, I think about that and I provide it. Whatever he would like, I give it to him. I make him enjoy that or have that accommodation. Meanwhile, the other person is thinking the same thing about that person. So it's beautiful ricocheting. But the key thing which I wanted to mention this incident for was when Lord Buddha asks them, how about their communication? Basically. And they say, Bhante, there's no communication, there's no talking, except for one day out of, every 5 days we gather and we talk Dhamma. And that has been my insistence with students over the course of time. Too much talking about Dhamma doesn't mean there's practice of Dhamma. There's definitely, there needs to be seclusion. That comes first. You just need a little bit of Dhamma, Lord Buddha says in the Dhammapada. Really, you don't need to get your PhD or your MBA, like I was saying. So, any other thoughts, questions, comments? Okay, I would like to do something different before we close the session today, because a request was made about those loved ones of ours who pass away, and if I could say a few words that we get from our tradition in regards to transferring of merit, but specifically in this case, given the passing of individuals' loved ones. Now, these loved ones might have already taken rebirth, sometimes many rebirths, because the lifespan of different realms are different, especially in the animal realms. They range, or even as humans or devas, it might be a few days, it might be a few seconds. So we shouldn't think that they are there and stuck there for a whole 100 years or a million years or something. Nevertheless, the reason why I say this is, please do not underestimate the power of your intention in transferring these merits. As participants, even if you're not physically here and you're listening to this recording later, by the very fact that you have listened to it and dedicated your awareness and your quiet mind to listen to the words of Lord Buddha and to ponder their depth, that is huge reservoir of merits that you can share with beings. And remember, even if it's not reaching your particular loved one that you have in mind, but it will reach the other loved ones who are in the Peta realms, your loved ones, because they are massive in number, and oftentimes they're completely forgotten by their loved ones. There is not a Peta out there who was not related to us. And they are in desperate pain, anguish. The hungry ghosts, sometimes you hear them about them. And they are, Lord Buddha says, they are the best recipients, the guaranteed recipients of your merits. So please have that in mind as you put your hands together and have your loved ones in mind. Yata vari vaha pura paripurenti sagarang evameva ito dinnang ketanang uppakappati ichitang patitang tumhang kippameva samijjatu sabbe purentu sankappa chando pannaraso yata mani jyotiraso yata sabbityo vivajjantu sabbarogo vinassatu mate bhavatvantarayo sukhi digayiko bhava abhivadana silissa niccang vudha pachayino chattaro dhamma vadhanti ayuvanno sukhang balang bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata Sabba buddhanubhavena saraswati bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata sabba dhammanubhavena saraswati bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabba mangalang rakhantu sabba devata sabba sanganubhavena saraswati bhavantu te. Now, imagine, visualize all the devas, all beings, all your loved ones alive and those who have passed, absorbing the energy, the beautiful, juicy, colorful energy from your offering that only you can make, only you can provide, only you can project and direct to them, benefiting, and they're glowing. And may they move to a higher state of being. If they're in an anguished state of rebirth, may this bump them up, boost them in their energy, so they go to the higher level, higher and higher and higher levels. So it dissipates the intensity of their negative karmic residue that holds them in a lesser state, relinquishing them from that, allowing them to glow and go into higher planes of existence, wherever those might be. But you are responsible for generously opening your heart and giving it to them, all the merits that you have accrued from your practice, from your Sila, from your Dana, of course, from your Sila, from your practice of meditation. That is a powerful reservoir of virtue and especially merits, and your Punya, sharing it with all of them equally. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantangan ditva chiranatantu saskam. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantangan ditva chiranatantu desanam. Akasatha chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantangan ditva chiranatantu mam. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you all be well. May the triple gems blessings be with you all, always. And may you practice restraint, which is allowing you to live and feeling, experiencing blameless happiness throughout. Sukhi Hotu. Until next time.